Jude and the Zombies, Part 2. Learning about loneliness. December came. I'd stopped crawling on all fours, if only to save my poor knees. I kept the shades drawn and the doors closed. I was too afraid to open a window or a door, even a small crack. I finally stopped sleeping so much. I started to try and keep busy, reading, playing with the cat, or quietly cleaning the house. But it was excruciating. I wanted to know what was going on. Christmas. I tried to ignore it, but it came anyway. There was even snow. I made small fires in the fireplace from all the paper in our filing cabinet. It seemed Robert had kept every receipt from every purchase for the last 10 years. Bundled up with sweaters and wrapped in blankets, I watched the zombies milling around outside. They moved very slowly when it got cold. The ones that had decomposed the most actually froze. The newer ones that still had shreds of clothing survived the best. There seemed to be fewer attacks, at least where I lived. The soundtrack of moans and screams was almost completely gone. I couldn't decide if that was because they were so much slower or because there were no people left. I've never been one of those people to get depressed at Christmas. I had family close by, I had Robert, and we had lots of friends. I never understood those lonely people until this terrible year. Most days I would sit on the sofa, pet my kitty, and watch the days grow darker. One day I picked up my phone. It was dead, but I flipped it open anyway. I so wanted to call someone and have them answer. I opened a bottle of wine and drank 3 glasses, hoping that would help me cope. It only made things worse. I had to kill myself. January was the month I found out I didn't have the guts to kill myself. I tried the big knife from the kitchen in a bathtub full of water. I got as far as running the faucet and sitting in the freezing water, but the big, sharp knife stayed put on the toilet seat. I hoped for pneumonia from sitting in the cold water, but stayed healthy. I tried pills and wine, but couldn't bring myself to swallow the pills. I was thoroughly ill from an entire bottle of red wine to myself, though. I suppose it wasn't in my nature to kill myself. My whole body resisted the idea, even though my mind demanded it. The only way I would die would be their attack, and they wouldn't come near the house. I waited until the end of January before I mourned for Robert. Sometimes I tell myself he's just hiding, but I know in my heart that's not true. I can only hope that he's truly dead, not one of those undead things wandering around. They don't starve, they don't disappear, they're here forever, it seems. I was sure I would go insane being alone all the time. The kitten was company, but she was an animal. All she did was eat and claw at the front door. She was also getting bigger and seemed less interested in me. I was at a loss of what to do. I sat around, I read my books, I pet my cat. But what else was there? April showers bring May monsters. Spring brought the monsters back. The ones that had been frozen thawed and greedily went after almost anything that moved. I saw them attack a few slow-moving squirrels, but for the most part they didn't seem terribly interested in animals. A few weeks into March, I realized my neighbors to the right had survived through the winter. That is until I heard a crash of glass one morning. I listened to the monsters break my neighbor's windows, push down the door with a horrific crack. I listened to their screaming turn from shrill to garbled as blood filled their throats. I wish I'd had the guts to go over there before the dead did. I peeked out the window and saw glass and mangled 2x4s scattered out on their front lawn. They had really made an effort to keep the dead out. I wasn't even trying and was being left alone. It seemed so unfair. I listened as they prowled around my house but never broke in. A serene little house, locked up tight with me inside, all alone. One day I couldn't stand it anymore. I pulled open the blinds on the back door. A face was there. I screamed loud, certain that if I made enough noise, they would come and end this torment of being alone. The face was one of my neighbors. His skin was that terrible gray color, and there was dried blood around his empty eye socket. It was his right eye that was gone. At first, when he saw me screaming, he lunged, but then that peculiar thing happened again. He lunged forward, his nose touching the glass. Then he stopped, sniffed in and out quickly, and fell back, landing on his rear on the wet grass. He scrambled up and ran off as quickly as his stiff, dead body would allow. I stood blinking. As I had predicted, my scream brought more of them to my door. They came from everywhere and all did the same thing. They got close to the door, saw me, and would immediately fall back. It was infuriating. I opened the back door, stepped outside, slammed the door to get some attention, and walked toward one. It spun at the sound of the door, saw me, and ambled away. I ran after it. I followed it down the side of the house to the front yard. There were 1 or 2 small groups, both of which I tried approaching. I reached out and touched them, their cold, hard bodies actually under my fingertips, and still they ran. Some even swatted my hand away. I was utterly alone. But at least now I knew I could go outside. Who let the cat out? I was reluctant to let the cat out. After what I'd seen with the squirrels, I was afraid they would attack her. I hadn't seen any other attacks on animals, but I was still anxious about it. I decided to do an experiment. I would go out with her and see if they approached her. She darted out the door and I ran after her. She went and sat in the driveway. There were about 5 of them milling around. They looked toward the sound of the opening door and the cat's bell. They lurched forward a little, but didn't make a move to get close to me. I stood next to the cat. Then all of a sudden, she streaked after something, a bug in the bushes maybe. I watched with horror as their dead eyes followed her movement. "Come back!" I screamed. I ran to the bush and tried to find her, but she wasn't there. I started to sob. "I'm sorry. Please come back," I said through my gasping sobs. After 20 minutes of searching, I had to go back inside. The fresh air was nice, but they were just standing around, walking aimlessly, watching the birds and the bugs. Everything seemed too normal and too absurd at the same time. It seemed like a normal day, but there were all these bloody dead people standing around. I went inside. I wanted to throw up in response to the absurdity outside, but to my horror, I felt fine. She came scratching at the door 3 hours later, proudly bringing a dead sparrow in with her. I was so ecstatic that she was alive, I let her chew it up on the living room carpet, and I even left it for a few hours before scooping it up with a plastic bag. I knew it was a gift. She wanted to thank me for finally letting her out.